Botswana Thinking Law Podcast, episode 9.
8.
We're on episode 9 or 8.
Yes.
It's
because episode 7 is the one that died midway. Right?
Okay.
So the last episode was 7.
Okay.
Now this is 8.
Okay. I'm waiting to celebrate at 10. That's why.
Right?
But yeah, anyway, episode 8 is where we are. Every week we hang out.
Yeah.
We talk about all things Botswana law.
Yeah.
You know, it's not legal advice.
Yes.
It's just a conversation.
Yeah.
Bonolo our resident legal expert.
Please don't do call us
Bosa Bonolo Selelo attorneys.
You know, everyone gets that wrong. Bosa is B.O. Selelo.
Oh, okay. I thought, okay. So, Bonolo Umpile Selelo. I just wanted to flex, but I know your middle name.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, no, we have conversations about the law. Sometimes we'll just, just go off
freestyle. Like last week we were on a serious freestyle.
Oh, but it was fantastic. Man.
It was.
We had a good time.
Yeah.
But today we're sticking to the topics. Mikana, we did say, the nice thing about it also, it's our part. We can do whatever we want.
Right.
And yeah, so once in a while we'll add, as we said. You remember you said you want to do cases where we break down judgments. Yes. So yeah, sometimes we'll go into a judgment. Sometimes we'll have a topic. Sometimes we'll, Sometimes, yeah.
Hey, speaking of which, today I found out 2 people are having babies. One is a client of mine who is supposed to come and sign some papers, and their partner sends me a message saying, "Oh my goodness, our baby's on the way, so she won't be able to come." Yeah. Now a fellow practitioner is like, "Oh my goodness, a baby's on the way," and I'm just like, "Hey, I see children are being born."
No, I rebuke the spirit of childbirth that you are trying to put on me. What are we talking about? What does that have to do with anything?
How weird is it, right?
Yeah.
I don't recall at any point in time where I've been told children are being born in such a short space of time.
Yeah, I get you.
Right?
It's
like where someone will go into labor, but now I'm like, wait.
2 people?
Yeah. Same day.
Yeah. Hey, but you listen to them. It's a population.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, you know what? I find there's no proper planning and things of that nature. But sometimes, hey, the thing about children is that you never really know how to plan for them until they're here. It's like one of those things where you don't know a thing until you've experienced it.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough.
Yeah.
Side conversation.
I was about to go off it now, but okay. Let's get to what we're talking about today. So today's pod, we're talking about
legal capacity.
Yes, that's what we're talking about today.
Yes, and I think it plays really well with the children. Right?
Yes.
Because there are different types of legal capacity or limitations in relation to legal capacity. And one of the limitations is minority. Like people who are below the age of 18 are considered minors in our law, and therefore their legal capacity is very reduced. But the common mistake when a child inherits property from somewhere, right? People will say, especially tribal land, land board. People will say, no, or relative and things like that. But the law actually allows for that property to be registered in the name of the child. It's just that in the description, it will be assisted by, and then the name of the parent or guardian. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That, what you just said now, tying into what we're talking about, had me thinking about what we just spoke about, people having kids, and you saying your client's husband is the one who called you, right, over her legal matters.
Yes.
And I imagine if she's in labor in the hospital and some documents need to be signed or whatever the case is, the husband can sign on her behalf.
Yes, it depends actually.
Yeah.
And I say it depends because sometimes you find that people will say the default is the husband, right?
Yeah.
Or the spouse. But then there are instances where a person will nominate someone else to say, oh, when it comes to my medical decisions, I want them made by person XYZ. Yes. Especially when I'm incapacitated. Yeah.
We didn't even break it down from the beginning.
Hey,
legal capacity. Hey. What is legal capacity, according to Molao?
Hey, so legal capacity, just generally, it is the ability to do certain things under the law. Right?
Okay.
And when I say ability to do certain things is you find some of the things are general, like minority or a minor can't do certain things. But then you find certain laws that will be exceptions to the general rule. I'll give you an example. A 16-year-old can make a will. Right? In terms of the Wills Act. They don't have to be assisted by a parent or guardian.
Okay.
Right?
I didn't know this. Okay.
And yet, the law in relation to minority says that a person who is below the age of 18 doesn't have legal capacity. So the Wills Act makes an exception to that. Or okay, at 16 you can have a will.
Decide which one has precedent over the other one.
I think it depends on and I say this.
Wait, precedent, is that the right word? I don't think so. That's not the right word.
Yes, like which one takes priority?
Yes, priority is the word I was looking for. Yes.
So it depends on what it is that you're dealing with.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
An example.
Okay.
There used to be a time when a 16-year-old could get married. Right, with the consent of the parents, right? And then the law changed and said, hey, this is 16, right? Like, as 16-year-olds.
100%.
There used to be a time when the age of consent in relation to sexual relations was 16, and then it was changed to 18. So there are so many things that are considered, and you look at the ages depending on what it is that you're dealing with at that time.
Okay. Now, there's a few terms and phrases that I came across when I was, prepping for this legal capacity issue. And I just want you to break them down to me. Well, it's still going to be a conversation, but please pardon my question and answer situation because I need to understand. This phenomenon of natural persons, how about the natural persons? Isn't every person a natural being?
Right? And that's because the law recognizes other types of persons that are called juristic persons, like a company.
Yes.
A company is a person under the law.
Okay. So that's why there's like the different legal entities. So natural persons were specifically speaking about Tonamalemanji. And then, okay, so let's start there and then we'll get to the other side where there's the companies and the trust and all that stuff. Minority and emancipation. How about the emancipation?
So emancipation, when a person is below the age of 18, they are a minor.
Yes.
So under the law, they suffer from a legal disability in that they have to be assisted by a parent or guardian in order to transact or do certain things under the law, right? Like enter into contracts, buy properties, and all of these things. Except if the law, like Yekibu Ahmed, really says something different. Emancipation, to say, the court should effectively declare me to be a legal adult. Especially when it comes to right? But for me, emancipation doesn't then extend to everything else. Because at the end of the day, this person is still a minor. And so if there's an order emancipating this minor from their parent, and because it deals with their affairs, dilo tsa bone. And you find it a lot in these countries where you have working children, actors and all that, and they're making a lot of money, and maybe the parents are misusing them, and this child will say, no, I can take care of my own affairs in this respect. Yes, that's what the emancipation is about. Or I want to be able to do these things without the assistance of my parents.
Yeah, because I was about to ask you, what circumstance does a kid even find themselves mo Botswana, especially where
in fact, I don't know if I've ever come across a case say emancipation in Botswana, but I've come across it from a South African standpoint.
Okay.
Yes, where a matter was brought for an emancipation, and I think the person at the time was 17 or so. Yes.
What was the story with the case?
I can't remember. It was such a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay. It was the thing about the law is because it's evolved so much, right?
Yeah.
It was at a time when the law was still a bit iffy in relation to minority. I say this because the law was at the time, if you get married, like as a 16-year-old and you get married at 16, you've effectively been emancipated without necessarily having to go to court. You're considered to almost be a major. Because you can't keep going to your parents and be like, I'm not yet a major. So there was a point in time where the law was sort of fluid, if I can say that, which wasn't necessarily a good thing, but I don't know, that's what it was. So it was, I feel, easier for a minor to come and say, I'm running this business, can I have this inheritance and things like that, for the court to be like, hey, and make your own money, and you believe your parents are mismanaging your funds and all that, you're emancipated.
That makes sense, yeah.
But now, when you look at the law and you look at the best interest of the child, you would rather find a situation where the court will say, rather than emancipating you and making you a pseudo-adult, we will appoint a curator to take care of these things for you. Rather than saying, okay, you 15-year-old, like you're an adult.
Figure yourself out. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what about a situation where it's very rare that it happens in Botswana? Just a few months ago, my cousin was in town and we're moving around, and he's like, man, like, one thing I noticed about your country, that you guys are super rich in this country because you guys don't have homeless kids. There's no homeless kids or homeless people generally, why is that? And I was like, that's because Botswana, Kanyali Sika is still very much a thing where if you can always go back home.
Yes.
There's landlord you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but it got me thinking, us talking about this in a situation like that, what happens where somebody has absolutely nothing, no parents, no guardian, no nothing, maybe their parent just passed away as for 15 years or something like that. And then they figured themselves out until 16, 17. Now it's time for you to go to varsity. You have to sign that contract at DTEF. And from what we just said now, if you're a minor, you can't, you don't have capacity to rock.
Yes.
So what happens in that instance?
So in Botswana, the law is that there's no minor that is without a guardian, right? And that is because the High Court and the government they're guardians of all minors in Botswana. And it has nothing to do with the citizenship of the minor. Right? So if, for example, someone comes here from a different country and they have a child here, and maybe this child is mistreated and things of that nature, it is possible for the government to intervene because it is considered to be the guardian of all minors in Botswana. And yes, and that's one of the reasons why Botswana still has travel affidavits. When you want to travel in and out of the country with a minor, you have to have the travel affidavit signed by the parents who are on the birth certificate, or if it is the one parent. If it's both parents, you can also get a court order to say only one parent can give consent and things like that, right?
Yeah.
But even with that being said, in the scenario that you're painting, it is possible for this minor to actually get assistance for social welfare. So that they're able to progress in life. So there are actually different things that can be done under the law to assist children in that situation. It's just that a lot of times, especially they don't know what facilities and what things are open to them from a national perspective for them to be able to benefit.
And now that brings me to another question where I'm a next door neighbor of this family. The parents unfortunately pass away. The kid is left by themselves. They kind of figure it out on their own. But now it looks like, the kid actually comes to me and says, but all sorts of misappropriation of things there.
Yes.
As the next door neighbor, what steps do I take in that instance?
Social welfare. Because the Children's Act actually gives social welfare a lot of powers in order for it to bring matters for and on behalf of children, right? Especially children where maybe the guardians or the parents are not there, they're no longer alive, or in situations where the parents or guardians are the problem. Yes. Yes, and that's why we have a situation where children will be declared children in need of care, and the law can actually strip parents of parental rights.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Another phrase I came across, hate di lunatico inquirero. No, let me read this. So my name is Carlos, right? If you ask me where that comes from, I have no idea.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know what was going on with my folks.
Maybe they loved Carlos Santana. You never know.
I have no idea. Unfortunately, my mom passed before I could ask her, and I've never known my dad. But what I did find out was Carlos is English for Charles, and Charles was a name that essentially meant free man or something like that. So now, as I'm older, I find that I am extremely in love with like Spanish TV shows. Narcos. There's absolutely nothing you can tell me about Narcos, dog. I've watched every single episode of whether it's Narcos, the original one, or Narcos Mexico. That stuff. I love that stuff.
I thought you were going to talk about the telenovela.
No, not that No.
Carlos.
Come on.
The telenovelas apparently are fantastic.
Those are essentially soapies, right?
Yes.
No. I mean the ones about the drugs and stuff. Them ones. So when I saw this, I was like, I can't wait to say this phrase, because you can imagine it's like how we learned a lot of South African languages. It's through both generations and whatever it's subtitled, right? So, my wife would be coming into the house and I'm like, hey, mi amor, with a little bit of Spanish there, So when I saw this phrase, I'm like, I'm gonna get a chance to flex my Spanish or whatever, So the lunatico inquirero, because I roll on I say inquirero. You say it, Anyway, what does that phrase mean, Doug?
In respect of the High Court rules, right? It is a situation where a matter is brought to court in order to have a person declared by the court to be of diminished mental capacity. Right? And there's an entire procedure involving like the medical report and so on to demonstrate indeed is of diminished capacity. It is not easy to get an order under the Dilunicato, right? And you find as part of the process, they also, what happens is when you bring the application, right, you would be asking for someone called a curator bonus to be appointed. And a curator bonus is effectively someone who will be managing the financial and personal affairs for this person who is considered to be of diminished mental capacity.
Gotcha.
And then there will be another person who is appointed somewhere in the middle called a curator ad litem. And that is the litigating curator. This is the person who will be looking at the papers to see whether or not to act on behalf of this person to defend and say, actually, no, this person is fully in charge of their capacity, mental faculties. They're okay. Why do you want to do this, right? So it's not easy to get that order. However, we have the Mental Health Act, which gives like an alternative procedure to having a person sort of declared as having diminished mental capacity, right? Where you have a committal order from the district commissioner, and that order is used for these examinations, especially if maybe they're a danger to themselves or there's some issue that prevents them from functioning in society, right? And it requires the report from mental health professionals, but it doesn't go to the High Court as in the court. It goes through the Master's Office. Curator and so on and so forth. And the problem with that is if there's collusion within a family, it is easy for these things to happen. A person doesn't have recourse or able to talk to someone and say, hey, but the Mental Health Act actually says, especially for a person who a committal order has been granted in respect of, right? Or they can ask a friend to come and help them to find out what the basis of getting that committal order is, and so on and so forth. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing that I guess we spoke about Wendy Williams earlier on, where she's going through this thing where, like, even there's been reports of even her own son, is misusing her funds, her nieces, her whatever, her family basically.
Yes.
And now she's under they call it conservatorship.
Yes.
Yeah, she's under the conservatorship of, there you go, rolling your eyes because I'm using American terms.
No, I'm not even rolling your eyes. Because of the American terms, right? I just find it absolutely ridiculous that, like, take Britney Spears, for example, where this person is stripped so much of their legal personality that they are trapped, right? She couldn't hire her own lawyer, no visitors. They had to make appointments for her. I think she even said they caused her to terminate a pregnancy at some point, things of that, and for so long as well, right? Wasn't any person who is intervening and saying what is going on, right? And people now fleecing her estate, and it's actually quite it's shocking.
It's terrible.
Yes.
So these instances, that's where people just need to be careful.
Yes, because like I usually say, there are two types of civil matters that are quite terrible, or they take forever. Divorces and inheritance matters. And primarily because of the money aspect. And they'd be fighting where someone is not entitled. It is clear under the law, Oromoto is not entitled to this thing. So where humanity and greed mix, it's quite a terrible combination.
And so what protections are in place here where, let's say whoever is looking for, can I call it authority over this person's matters?
Yes.
They manage to get the order through, right? Does the government or does the law come back and check? Do they come back and check a few months in, a few years in, or are things going the way that you had said in your application things will go?
I think it's a yes or no, yes and no answer, because when a person is appointed a curator, it means they take care of someone's estate.
Yeah.
And when we start talking estates, we're talking the master. Because the master deals with estates even when it's not of people baba thokahetse.
Yeah.
So a company that undergoes liquidation falls under the master. A company that is put under judicial management falls under the master. So the estate of a person is declared to be of diminished capacity would also fall under the purview of the master, because the master needs to make sure their assets are not being mismanaged. But right now, where the master's office is overwhelmed, right, it is possible for things to fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
It is possible, and we've seen it where the executor, the estate, are completely misusing the assets, the estate.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah. There's been cases of lawyers as well.
Hey, Doctor, you know what? Carlos, unfortunately, as lawyers, we earn our reputation. Because some of the things we hear, or the lawyer, you're just there like, hey. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. I wanted to, you mentioned mastera, how do I cover the country in Zidia of mastering? Honokila le Karumalo, who work a mastera, Mopalabin, officer mastera. One hell, cut the one hell. That's what they essentially like. Barry officer mastera needs to be everywhere, like all over the country. I see you, the wheels are turning, and you're about to go in. We're going to discuss some other time.
Yes.
We'll talk about it some other time because we have so much to cover on legal capacity.
Yes, but so
briefly, yeah.
Officer Master, one hella the same way that there's only one high court. Right? So there's only one high court and the rest are divisions. Right?
Okay.
So you have your Lobatse division, Gaborone division, Francistown, Maun division. Right? And then the reason I'm pointing this out is because even with the master, there's only one master.
Yes.
And then Baba Mwekidi deputy assistant. Right? And then you find them in different divisions across the country. Yes, delimited. Like Maung has its own master's office. Francistown has its master's office. And then there's a master's office in Mogaboron.
But can the master in Maung make decisions without the main?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They are masters, assistants, or deputies that actually have the power to exercise the duties the master.
Our dear MPs never were going.
Yeah, I get it. The whole country, Carlos.
Oh, so they, yeah, they made it sound like there's one off, like there's one decision maker.
I guess it goes back to what, remember the discussion we had last week? Sometimes when people talk law and practice, you can tell Hababu, there are people that are not practicing the law that they are trying to challenge, right? Private practice. This thing. So that when you go and say there's only one person, yes, there's only one master, but they are assistants, they're deputies, and they are in these different offices and are able to make decisions. Yes.
Yeah, I thought we need more lawyers. And I would like to think legislation and the law are essentially the same thing, right?
Yes.
So
legislation is a part of law.
So shouldn't our legislators go through some law course for them to be legislated? Like, shouldn't they at least they have just like, how could you be? I did, was it LAW 100 or something like just the basics? Because that sounds like a basic thing if you know what I mean?
Okay, here's the thing, right?
Here we go, going completely off topic.
It's not
fine.
even like
this
that.
Is why I didn't want us to, but we have to.
the thing is that the law is a weird creature in that, but I suppose it's not weird, it's the same in every profession, right? The theory of it and the practice of it are very different. They're worlds apart, right? So you can say to a person, 1 + 1 is 2. And that answer will be correct whether you are an accountant, you are an auditor, 1 plus 1 will always be true, right? But in law,
1 plus 1,
right? It's when you mix yellow and blue, right? You get green. That's the general principle. But in law, you know, okay, but if you add more yellow and less blue, it becomes lime. If you add more blue and less yellow, it becomes mauve or whatever. You know what I mean? And that's how the law is. You never have your green. You have the shades of it, and that's what practice then teaches you. Well, yes, when you put in yellow and blue, the general concept is that it will give you green. But if you add less yellow and more blue, you know it goes this way. If you add more yellow and less blue, it goes this way.
Hence your favorite answer. It depends.
It depends,
1
right?
plus 1 is not. It depends.
It depends.
How big is the one and the other? Oh my goodness. Back to legal capacity. I hear.
Yes. So, and trust and believe, Carlos, the master's office is overwhelmed, right? Because imagine I've just said to you, Master Raudilale, the companies that get wind up, companies under judicial management, deceased estates. They also deal with people that get put into curatorship, right? They deal with insolvent estates. And I suppose we can move on to talking about insolvency as part of capacity.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So for a person to be said to be insolvent, it has to be an order of court. The High Court has to declare them insolvent. And an insolvent person is a person whose liabilities are more than their assets, and they're not able to meet their obligations in relation to those liabilities. Right? So together, I can actually be declared as insolvent in terms of the law. And as soon as I am declared as insolvent, I have diminished capacity. There has to be a curator who is appointed to my estate. Or, I can't go and sign the contract and things of that nature, right? So because of that, I am reduced almost to a minor when it comes to certain things. It's not all types of contracts, but it's a worrying amount of contracts, right? Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so as soon as a person is declared insolvent, then the estate falls into the purview of the master.
Okay.
Right?
So,
and then now trusts also fall into the purview of the master.
Okay. So legal capacity. It looks like the master just needs operational capacity.
The master's office is overwhelmed because the sheer amount of work that is involved with being a master is a lot.
The first couple is the law is it keeps evolving and it's dynamic. Hopefully, these are things that they're like, okay, so I guess the MPs were onto something. Their thing was people are coming to us to complain about so something needs to be done about it.
Absolutely. Deceased estates take forever, Carlos. They take forever to get administered. And that's one of the reasons why we always encourage people for right? Because wills make the process shorter. They make the process shorter, but generally master's office is overwhelmed.
Okay. Ara hete ha ka speed ya. Ha re bua ka dikgang capacity, re bua ka di minor, re bua ka people who aren't of the right mental state. Ke batla go botsa ka borre le bomme. Ra itse re le ha tsele re tsela mo go lona le na le kgaoganya ya ro go na le di issues tse gore a man and a woman, do they have the same capacity as far as the law is concerned?
Yes, they do, right? There used to be a time when they did not, especially married women.
Married women, yes.
And especially if they married in community of property. They were effectively reduced to the state of a minor, where they had to be accompanied, quote unquote, by their husband in order to transact, whereas the husband could just willingly do whatever he wants, you know. Yeah.
But things have evolved to a better.
I think so. I haven't come across anything, at least in law, that sort of seems to make women come off as somehow lacking. Yes, in the capacity standpoint. However, I want to point out that we still do have remnants of laws that were created to protect women, quote unquote, right? Because they were seen as unable to protect themselves, like the Deserted Wives and Children's Act, right? Where a wife can go to the magistrate's court and say, you know, my husband has deserted the home and I was dependent and. But why is it that it's deserted wives? Why is it not deserted spouses?
Yeah. Okay.
So as much as that particular law is seen as protecting women, it is a remnant of laws that were there because women were not able to, right? And when you read it, I think one of the things is that, if I remember well, that she can't claim if she's pregnant by another man or something like that. So you're just like, oh, okay. Yeah. So there are certain laws that are still there that need to be reviewed, because you can tell some of the spirit of the law was in the right place, but you could tell
it wasn't. Okay, sure. Let's talk about capacity of different legal entities.
Yes.
Let's start with a company.
So a company is like it's a person effectively created by the law.
Okay.
Yes. So it can do anything. I think even commit a crime. Right? But the debate becomes, okay, is the company the one that commits the crime, or is it the officers of the company that are committing the crime?
Yes.
Right? But if they're using the company as a vehicle for the committing of the crime, then the company would be prosecuted, quote unquote. Yes, but if there's a jail term, then it would be, what is it? It would be served by the natural persons. But if it's a fine, it would come from the company and together with the natural persons.
Okay. Yes. So as soon as it's registered, SIPA agrees where everything is in order, then which reminds me, we need to have a conversation about my company.
We need to talk about the amendments to the Companies Act. Because there's so much misinformation that I'm seeing fly around. And I'm just like, it's like, people are like, no, even our small companies have the auditor and stuff. I'm like, okay, have you actually read the amendments and what they say? Right? Like, anyway.
That's the Companies Act, is the amendments of the Companies Act. That's what we're talking about next week. So we'll talk about that. Definitely, that's what we're talking about next week, because I agree with you. Like, there's a few things that I didn't understand with the amendments. You know, why the company secretary need to be registered. We need to talk about all of that. Yes. Let's get back here. Another legal entity is, okay, so company, companies can be treated as essentially a person.
Yes.
What about we come together and we form an association or a society or a group or a thing that we're saying, okay, you know, and then expecting society. What does the law say about that?
So, okay. Here's the thing, right? There are different types of entities that can be created under the law.
Yeah.
You can create a partnership, which is 2 or more people up to 20.
Okay.
Common goal, to make profit, bring skills, labor, money, in order to grow your respective estates, right? That's a partnership. It doesn't get registered. It's not a juristic person. It's a legal entity, but it's not a juristic person. So there's no separation between the partners and the partnership.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Meaning, if it's a partnership of 5 people, if one person falls away, whether they want to leave or they die, the partnership dissolves. The other 4 can reform, but if they reform, it's a new partnership.
It's a different partnership altogether.
Yes.
Okay.
Right? And then you have your society and associations. Right? With the amendment to the Societies Act, there used to be a time when not all societies had to register. But then the Societies Act was amended to say all societies have to register. Right?
Yeah.
And then depending on the type of thing you want to do with that, your numbers differ. I think churches minimum 100 or something like that.
150 or
100 or 50. And then I think for any other, it's about 50 or something like that minimum, right? And they, as a general rule of thumb, the law has not said they are automatically juristic persons.
Okay.
Right? They have to meet certain requirements in order to be considered to be people under the law. Right? Number 1 is that they shouldn't be for profit.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
And then number 2, they should have what is it? They can exist in perpetuity. Okay. So it doesn't matter how many people keep coming and going, that entity will still exist. But if it is tied to just specific people, then it doesn't meet the threshold in order for it to be considered to be a person under the law. Yes.
Like both among Basidi and Imam Basidi has had different persons and different workers and etc. So
yes, but is it a society? Or association. I don't know.
Not too sure. Yeah.
Because you know, people can call themselves anything.
Yes.
They can call them a society, association, whatever, when they're registered as a completely different entity.
Yes, no.
We're just saying generally.
God, I want to soundbite chop us up and get us into trouble. Okay. All right, you know what? As I always say with these conversations, and there's a lot here. There's a lot that I feel like we should be talking about, but unfortunately we don't have the time. So again, number if you want to understand these things, you know, you're finding yourself in a situation where people have gone up, they put you in this thing, you signed up for it, and then you kind of moved away and did your own thing, and then 2 years later you hear what they. Hey, Marina, you're one of the directors or you're one of the people involved in this situation.
Yes.
You know.
And you see, with companies, it's better because there's that corporate veil that protects like directors and officers and shareholders, right?
Yeah.
There are very few instances where the courts will allow that corporate veil
yeah.
Because you don't want a corporate veil to be pierced willy-nilly. Otherwise, why do people form companies, right? Yeah. But with a partnership, there is no corporate veil, right? If one partner gets in trouble, we are all in trouble. Yes.
And at the very similar level, from the social cloud.
And then one of you gets married, right? And then the other spouse, because you know, I always tell people when they think of the law, they don't think about it from a realistic standpoint. They think about it from a theoretical perspective.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a typical example. You and me, we form a partnership, right? I then get married in community of property to someone. And then this person, right? So in terms of the law, because we're married in community of property, that liability, right?
Yeah.
Unless I go to court through the Abolition of Marital Power Act to have that set aside and all that technicality.
Yeah.
If I don't do that, it's our liability. But because now we're in partnership and there's no protection, then it is your liability. And if you are married in community of property to someone else, it is all our liability. It's actually like an STD.
It sounds like it. It's partnership thing. I'm gonna avoid this partnership thing.
But the thing about partnerships is they can happen when you are unaware, right? Motshelo is the most typical partnership that people get into and not realize it is a partnership.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So if like we always say, a verbal contract is
it's a contract. Yes.
Hey, I don't know.
Now, Atang, you meet all the requirements of partnership. Metsalo is usually more than 2 people.
Yeah.
But less than 20.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Number 1. Number 2, Batsanya Maj. Right?
Yeah.
Number 3, the intent is to grow their respective estates. Madi. For the good of the partners or the people in the Motselo. Right? And how do they grow this money? Ka go adimisana, ka go adimisa third parties, go tsa morokotso, baraka dilo in bulk, and yeah.
I need to have a conversation with my workers tomorrow. I need to have a conversation with them tomorrow.
Then what happens? Motselo opens the door. And it means there's somebody who's not probably good with money. And if these people find out then it opens the door to all of those
everyone
people.
Who's in the partnership. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we gotta be careful. Then legal capacity, you're living your life and then life happens, different life events. Marriage. If I decide to get married, does that affect my legal capacity in any way?
Yes, it does. Especially if you get married in community of property. Okay. There are certain things that you can no longer do by yourself without your spouse's consent.
People don't understand certain things. Marriage, this is like, you just saying that is so enlightening, where it's just like, yo, do you realize, before you got married, you are one, you can do whatever you want to do by yourself.
Yes.
As soon as you get married in community of property, okay, whatever regimen you want to go with, just understand. Only festival by yourself. Anyway, continue.
Yes.
So the thing that you talk about a lot, we're always thinking about. First of all, we always think about things from the theory perspective, and we're always thinking about things from the best case scenario perspective. You know, where you have to think about the negative, dog. Just thinking about the negative doesn't mean the negatives are going to happen.
Yes.
You're just preparing yourself.
Yeah. Now, and that's the thing, right? When you then explain to people,
this is the thing, they get upset at you. Yeah.
Right? Because they haven't experienced it. And then right?
Yeah.
So marriage, especially in community of property, has the effect of diminishing capacity. In that now you have to act as a collective when it comes to certain things. Like when you get a loan, right?
Yep.
Like when you want to sell certain assets.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So be careful out there, guys.
So,
be careful.
And I'm not saying people should marry in or out of community of property. Like I always say, it is up to you as the people getting married why you want what property regime. Right? So don't take it as me saying, hey, in community of property can I have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because even out of community of property can be a problem at a later time, depending on the circumstance.
Yeah.
And a typical example I always give to people, if one of the spouses passes away and they're married out of community of property, customary law doesn't apply. It then means what the surviving spouse has to share with the children equally right? So if, for example, I in these that's the matrimonial home, and they pass away, and go na le the surviving spouse o tshwanetse go kgaogana le bana. Ha e le gore ga gona bana, o kgaogana le batsadi and the siblings of the person who's passed away, right? Because they're married out of community of property. Whereas if they were married in community of property, they automatically get their 50%, and then 50% government will provide in Ghana or different um, percentages that are more favorable.
Okay. I honestly should not be talking about this, but it's been bugging me since we spoke about it earlier. When we spoke about legal capacity for what where this is not diminished, right? Where say somebody gets older and then Alzheimer's, dementia, and stuff like that. Is that diminished capacity?
Yes.
Okay, that falls under diminished
mental capacity.
Yeah, I just recently found out that one of our country's very successful entrepreneurs has, loses their capacity. And I'm saying this because, remember how I told you I wanted to document Botswana's history from different perspectives, whether it's business, whether it's the army or whatever the case is. This is one of the people that I'd actually spoken to about 2 years ago when I wanted to do this thing, and they were willing and ready to do it. And I found out recently when I reached, well, I didn't even reach out, just the information just came to me that this person who was literally going to be my star guest, literally like guest number one, like the most groundbreaking conversation about business. I found out that this person unfortunately has lost the mental capacity or mental faculties the way that they had them before. And I'm saying this, when I found out, obviously it hurts, but also I became a bit selfish about it. I was just like, ish, but you see, Carlos, this thing of yours of postponing things and saying, yeah, I get that. Now look, and the way this person is always willing to help out and talk to people about business and everything and whatever. And it's just like, now that they can't do it, I'm just like, man, now look, the country has lost out because you keep postponing things. Yeah. So saying that to say we need to stop postponing things, guys.
That is true.
If you
for me, it actually raises issue, and I don't want to come up as insensitive, right? Euthanasia. And I think it's a conversation that we are not having enough as a country.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because look, human life is precious and sacred and all of those things. But for me, Carlos, I would want to be myself when I depart, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be so diminished. I know maybe by that time they're born.
Yeah.
But I get back the memories that people have of me is way now my faculties are gone. And then I wander off and people and videos and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Like if we're willing to stand by the death penalty, right, and say, hey, let's make this person exit because they've taken another person's life. There should be an ability for a person to choose to say, I want a medically assisted exit because I can't do this life thing anymore.
You want to go out with a little bit of what's the word? Not respect. What's the other word?
Integrity.
Yes, dignity. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like we don't talk enough about euthanasia, and maybe it's because as a society, we don't take care of our elders.
No, we don't.
Right, and and all those things, but we actually let our elders down quite a fair bit.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we should be killing our elders.
No.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if we interacted more with our elders and we saw the way aging affects us.
Yeah.
We'd be able to put laws in place that protect elders and our aging population, but also laws in relation to euthanasia, because somebody might want to leave not because of age, but because of illness.
Yeah. I mean, you can imagine, or maybe you know someone as a certain person, and then your children come around when this person now has dementia. And one day they remember their kids, are thinking their grandkids, the next day they don't. It's just, it's a terrible thing to have to go through. It's terrible for everyone involved. It's just terrible. So
even
I'm trying to agree with you, actually.
In case you are
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Do we know whether Madia
Kana
mosadi mogolo kana monna mogolo ke ena yang go tsaya go tsaya madi ko posong wherever, and then ha ba tsana go lapeng a tsawa ke somebody else?
Because Mogolo can't speak for themselves because they're not of the right mental state.
Exactly.
And speaking of that, I just want to say shout out to but essentially like the community security guards, security policing. Apparently the young guys, what they used to do is literally on their way home, these kids kana ba tsena mo dijarateng mo malapeng mo ba tsaya madi a bagodi gore ba itse gore okay bagodi ba amogela ka di-27 or whatever go a itse hela gore di-20 di-29 is just breakings left, right and center in Chadile. And then the community just decided to stand up and just form, this thing where now, these guys are getting what they deserve. And it stopped apparently.
That's fantastic.
This year it hasn't happened again, so shout out to them. Okay, now cool stuff. I think we recovery legal capacity. recovery next week re bua ka di-company re batla re bua ga tsa di-constitution itse dikgang tsa di-auditara dikgang tsa di-company secretary dikgang tsa di-OBRS gate go change le go update. We need to have a conversation.
No, absolutely. I think it's an important conversation because there's so much misinformation. And the unfortunate thing is I don't do as much social media as I used to.
Yeah.
But hey, for taking so much of my time.
There's no time, yeah.
And maybe I do Sundays on Heaven FM.
Yes.
And so I was talking to our sessions, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, editing takes so much work. And I said, yep.
Yeah.
Editing takes a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah. Editing a 1 hour long podcast takes about 5 to 6 hours. Yeah. Okay, now cool stuff. We'll definitely get on to that next week. Have yourself a fantastic week, B.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Have a great week as well. Catch the Botswana Thinking Law podcast on YouTube and Spotify, and catch Botswana Thinking Law on various social media platforms, Facebook, X, TikTok, and so on, where we talk about Botswana law in English and Setswana.